You wake up, check your phone, get out of bed, go through the motions. You say you're tired, but it's not just tiredness. It's a heaviness, a weight you can't explain. You blame stress, work, maybe lack of sleep. But deep down, something doesn't add up. There's this strange feeling that you're not really steering the wheel, that some part of you is making choices without your permission. You promise you'll change, that you'll stop repeating the same patterns, but when it matters most, you default. Again and again. Carl Jung had a name for this silent force, the unconscious. But not the kind of unconscious people joke about. Jung wasn't interested in surface-level positivity or pretending your traumas don't exist. He went deeper. He realized that much of what you think is your free will is actually programming, emotional reflexes built by years of repression, fear, shame, and unmet needs. If you enjoy videos like this, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. That voice in your head that says, "Don't try, you'll fail," that craving to sabotage your relationship when it starts to get real, that anxiety that shows up out of nowhere just when things start going well, that's not random. That's your shadow knocking. The worst part, you think it's just how you are. You've worn this invisible cage for so long it feels like skin. Jung understood something most people still don't. What you don't confront in yourself ends up controlling you. Quietly, efficiently, invisibly. Like a script written by someone else that you're doomed to repeat, unless you finally wake up. So here's the first brutal truth. You're not in control. Not yet. But the moment you realize that is the moment you can start taking the wheel back. You weren't born broken. You were born whole, wild, emotional, curious, unapologetically yourself. But it didn't take long before the world started pruning you. Stop crying. Don't be so dramatic. That's not how boys act. Nice girls don't do that. Tiny messages, repeated enough times, they become laws in your psyche. And to survive, you obeyed. You began to edit yourself, to hide certain parts, the loud parts, the angry parts, the scared parts, the needy parts. You buried them so deep, you forgot they ever existed. But they didn't disappear. They became your shadow. Jung called the shadow everything we deny, reject, repress. And the more we shove it into the basement, the stronger it grows. Quietly, like mold, like poison gas. You can't see it, but it's there, shaping your fears, driving your compulsions, fueling your shame. Think about it. Why do you overreact to certain people? Why do you judge others so harshly? Why does success feel threatening, even though you say you want it? Because the parts of yourself you've disowned are still alive, and now they operate in the dark. That's the real prison, the self you had to abandon to fit in. And what's worse, you've confused suppression with strength. You think being in control means never breaking, never crying, never showing weakness. But all that effort to appear okay, that's just fear in disguise. The shadow isn't evil, it's wounded, and it's trying to be seen. That rage you ignore, it's asking for boundaries. That jealousy you hate, it's pointing to your unmet needs. That shame you carry, it's the grief of having betrayed yourself over and over. The shadow is not your enemy, but your silence is. And until you make peace with what you've hidden, you'll keep living in a war you don't even know you're fighting. You became who you had to be. You smiled when you wanted to scream. You acted confident when you felt like collapsing. You played the role, the good student, the reliable friend, the strong one, the funny one. And it worked, sort of. People liked you. You were accepted. You felt safe. But here's the problem. It wasn't you they liked. It was the mask. Jung called this the persona, the social face we wear to survive in a world that punishes authenticity. It's not inherently bad. Everyone has a persona. We need one to function. But somewhere along the line, you started to confuse the mask with your identity. You buried your real self so well that now, when you're finally alone, it's quiet, but not peaceful. It's empty. Because you don't know who you are without the roles. Who are you when there's no one left to impress? Who are you when you're not performing? What parts of you have never had a voice, simply because they weren't convenient? The persona is a brilliant survival strategy until it becomes a cage. You spend years polishing an image, and then one day you wake up and realize you don't recognize the person staring back at you in the mirror. Not because you changed, but because you disappeared. And here's the brutal irony. The more perfect your persona becomes, the more disconnected you feel. Why? Because the soul doesn't want perfection. It wants truth. You can have success, admiration, even love. But if it's aimed at your persona, you'll still feel starved. Because deep down, your real self is still in exile, waiting for permission to exist. And no one else can give you that permission. So the question is, are you ready to take the mask off, even if you don't know who you'll find underneath? Sometimes, you catch yourself doing things that don't make sense. Sabotaging something good, exploding over something small, chasing people who hurt you, avoiding the things you say you want. And afterward, you whisper, "I don't know what got into me." But Jung knew, because what got into you was already inside you, an invisible character taking control of the scene. He called them archetypes, ancient patterns of emotion, thought, and behavior wired deep into your psyche. They're not metaphors. They're psychic blueprints. You didn't choose them. You inherited them. The hero, the victim, the orphan, the rebel, the seducer, the tyrant, the martyr, each with its own script, each waiting for the perfect trigger to take the stage. And when one gets activated, it doesn't ask for permission. That's why it feels like you're being possessed. Because in a way, you are. When the wounded child in you takes over, you chase approval like oxygen. When the unintegrated warrior kicks in, you destroy everything just to feel powerful again. When the inner saboteur speaks, you start ruining things before they can leave you, just to avoid being abandoned first. You think these moments are you being emotional or irrational, but they're not random. They're rehearsed, ancient, archetypal. And here's the hard truth. As long as these characters remain unconscious, they will run your life. They will choose your partners. They will shape your fears. They will repeat the same story over and over. Different faces, same ending. Jung warned, when an inner situation is not made conscious, it appears outside as fate. Translation, you'll think life is against you, when in fact, it's you against yourself. But there's another way. You can learn to recognize these forces, not to silence them, but to integrate them, to finally reclaim the director's chair in the movie of your life. You call it anxiety, burnout, a rough patch. But what if it's not a malfunction? What if your breakdown is your soul trying to break through? Jung didn't see suffering as something to be fixed or avoided. He saw it as a signal, a sacred disturbance. Because when the psyche is off-center, when you've drifted too far from who you really are, it demands your attention, and it won't whisper, it will scream. The panic attack, the sudden apathy, the unexplained rage, the exhaustion that sleep can't fix. These are not glitches, they're invitations. Invitations to go deeper, to face what you've been running from, to finally stop pretending you're fine. Because here's the brutal truth no one tells you. Collapse is often the beginning of real transformation. Why? Because only when the mask cracks can something real finally come through. Only when the persona falls can the self begin to rise. Jung called this process individuation. It's not spiritual fluff. It's not becoming your best self. It's dying to who you thought you were and being reborn as who you truly are. It means turning toward your wounds instead of away from them. It means feeling what you've numbed for years. It means taking responsibility for the mess you've blamed on everyone else. And yes, it hurts. Because growth isn't clean, it's violent. The ego doesn't surrender quietly. It kicks, screams, bargains until it breaks. But on the other side of that collapse is clarity. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What part of me have I abandoned?" Pain isn't the problem, unconsciousness is. And if you've hit your limit, if everything in you is breaking, maybe that's not the end, maybe it's the door. You've been told that freedom is about having choices, but real freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's no longer being ruled by what you don't understand, because as long as your shadow stays hidden, it owns you. As long as your wounds stay unexamined, they run the show. As long as the old patterns go unnamed, you'll keep mistaking repetition for reality. And here's the hardest part to swallow. You can build the perfect life on the wrong foundation: career, followers, money, a relationship. But if it's built on fear, on guilt, on a persona you've outgrown, it'll collapse. Or worse, you'll feel empty inside it. Jung didn't offer comfort, he offered confrontation. He handed you a mirror when all you wanted was a map, because the path to wholeness isn't upward, it's inward, through the grief, through the rage, through the raw, unfiltered truth of who you are when nobody's watching. That's where the real you lives, the one who's tired of pretending, the one who's ready to stop performing, the one who's not afraid to be messy, complex, fully human. And here's what they never told you: the parts you hate in yourself, the jealousy, the anger, the insecurity, are not flaws. They're fragments, pieces of a self that was never allowed to fully exist. Freedom isn't found in fixing yourself. It's in facing yourself, owning every piece, giving voice to what's been silenced, letting the shadow step into the light, not to dominate, but to be seen. Because once the unconscious becomes conscious, it can no longer control you. So here's your invitation. Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting to feel ready. The darkness you fear is the doorway to your truth. You're not broken, you're just unfinished. And now, you get to rebuild, not as who you were told to be, but as who you actually are. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.